Hey folks, Ken Poole here. I just wanted to have a little discussion with everybody in my database today, just regarding the market and where we are today and direction that things seem to be headed. And the reason I wanted to have this chat is with discussing with a lot of people over the last month or so, whether it be that they've got a piece of property that they need to sell off, or maybe there's people that are sitting on the sidelines waiting to enter the market. I do know multiple clients that only need to sell or only need to buy. And the interesting thing is that both of them seem to commonly be saying, I'm going to wait until the spring. I think it's going to be better in the spring. Which means that more than likely, one of those groups is going to be wrong. Okay, so what if you're wrong? Okay, I just want to put the idea in your head that that is a possibility. And I just wanted to have a discussion and give you things to think about while you decide on what your opinion of the market, whether or not it's important to you right now or not. First of all, interest rates, they recently went up again back on October 26th by 0.5%. It was actually slightly less than the expected rate increase. It appears right now that the Bank of Canada doesn't really know exactly how to read this, so they're just taking a more cautionary approach right now. But that's just hypothesizing. It does appear, and they've hinted that they are going to raise rates again on December 7th, although very non-committal on amount. Seems to be popular thought that it's going to be 0.25% to 0.5% again. But again, as we get closer to that, the opinions will strengthen on what the expectation is there. And there could potentially be another rate raise on January 25th. Okay, but here's the interesting thing. For the last 12 weeks straight in Simcoe County, the both average and median prices have been holding steady. Okay, in fact, if anything, they may have been climbing by 1% or 2%. All right, so for 12 straight weeks. Now, back in the middle of that 12-week span, there was a rate increase of 0.75%. Okay, so the rate increases are not directly correlating to price drops. Okay, the increased cost of borrowing is not directly correlating to pricing, which is counter to what news stories are putting out is the case. All right. And I think if the past couple of years have shown us anything, pricing doesn't directly correlate to affordability. So just because interest rates make things less affordable doesn't mean that in direct lockstep prices follow. Okay. Yes, there's no denying that rising interest rates put downward pressure on pricing. Okay. But in that 12-week time span, prices have held relatively stable, if anything, slightly risen. And in the middle of that 12-week span, about 6+ weeks ago, we saw a 0.75% increase. So keep that in the back of your head. Now, on top of this, since the new year, inventory has, across Simcoe County, since the new year, rose by about 1,800 units available, okay, net. Right? We sold off or some expired, but there are new ones that came on. Net gain of 1,800 units from the new year right up into mid-July or so. And then since then to this week, we've lost about 650 units of net inventory across Simcoe County. So, that downward trend doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon. Now, yes, interest rates rising put downward pressure on pricing, but do you know what happens when inventory decreases? It puts upward pressure on pricing, okay? And as we head into the winter season, as more listings expire, less of those will be put back on the board, and it looks likely that our inventory will only continue to shrink through the rest of the year. Another thing to consider is the buyer pool is growing, okay? There is a continuously growing group of buyer individuals that are just waiting on the sidelines because they believe the impending Armageddon is coming. Things are going to come collapsing back to prices of 2010 or something like that. And their reasoning behind it is, well, just because it has to. Okay? So, I mean, I don't know how you can argue with that kind of financial reasoning, but that has become a common refrain that's out there right now, and it just doesn't make any sense. So, that being said, what happens when things start to show that they're stable and start showing even hints of starting to raise again? I think the lid is going to pop off that group as well. So that's something to keep in the back of your head. Another thing to consider is, what would it cost? What do you think it would cost to buy land, buy the supplies, and build a home, and then sell it at a profit? Because nobody's going to do that out of the goodness of their heart, unless it's a charity organization. And so if properties start to sell below what it costs to build, and it becomes very difficult to buy new builds at a profit, or to sell new builds at a profit, the building will slow down to a halt. And then what happens to supply, right? The lower the supply, upward pressure on pricing. We can't crash down through the floor of this. I mean, we can, technically, but if that happens, I mean, the housing market is going to be the least of everybody's worries. Something else just to keep in mind, this early winter might be the best time to enter the market. It might be. I'm not saying it will be. I'm not saying it won't be. Anybody that can tell you definitively what is going to happen is flat out lying, because nobody knows, okay? But the reason it could be is just that, right now, with snow on the way, typically the market cools down a little bit further, okay? So combined with raising interest, which we just had one and we got another one coming start of December, many people have been priced out, okay? Entering the market has become incredibly difficult, but relief could be coming, right? Next year, if interest rates rise further than expected, you're probably going to start seeing longer amortizations come along. Again, I can't say for sure they will or they won't. And also, there's a lot of discussion out there that second half of 2023, there could be some rate relief coming. Rates could actually pull backwards by the end of 2023. Not by a huge amount, but we could start seeing it move the other direction. As soon as we start getting a hint that it's going the other way, what do you think is going to happen? So, right now moving is actually much easier than it was a year ago. We can actually put in proper conditions, financing, inspection, condition of the sale of your home. Like if you have to buy and sell, I'd argue right now is way better than it was before. The only complication is going to be your mortgage rate, right? And that's where you have to have a discussion with your mortgage broker or your lender just to find out what does that look like in a move. Right? And for some people, it's not going to make sense. For a lot of people, they can make it work to their favor, but there are some that it's just not going to work for. And that's just the truth, right? Right now in this market, hiring a true professional who knows what they're doing in this market, it pays huge dividends, right? Somebody that can market your place successfully, get the right people in there. Places still sell right now, and they do sell for good money, right? I think we've all got this image of the peak in our mind, but that's not necessarily market value. That being said, places that are priced appropriately right now are selling very successfully. And if you're working the market properly, you can sell on the higher end of what the market supports, and you can buy on the lower end of what the market supports. So you can win on both ends. Now, what if, just think about this in the back of your mind, what if prices only drop another 5% before they officially bottom out, which is a totally feasible scenario. Again, I can't tell you what's going to happen, but this is very feasible. Based on the other price drops we've seen over the span of the year, sometimes 4, sometimes 8 weeks after an interest rate hike, we see a little bit of a drop down to a new tier of pricing, not necessarily in lockstep with each other, not necessarily proportional to each other either, but usually they've been in the somewhere between 2 to 5% range. So what if prices only dropped another 5% before they officially bottom out and either hold steady or start going up? Okay. By the time that the prices start to bounce, conditions to buy might not be really as ideal. Mortgage rate will be higher at that time. And as well, there might be less inventory and people might start to become not as flexible with conditions. All the factors around everything in the market though, just keep in mind, it is not simple. It's very complex. Some of the unknowns that are out there are how much the immigration into the GTA over the next year is going to play a role in pricing. What is the cost of building going to look like next year? How deep is this recession going to go? There's issues that can go on and on here, and we don't know the full fallout from all of these things. Many in the banking industry seem to be commonly forecasting that rates are likely to start going the other direction by the end or late 2023. So this is not something that's apparently crashing down and burning down, and the whole housing market is going into some kind of reset to prices of the early 2000s. It's just not happening, okay? So, or appears extremely unlikely. So I just wanted to give you some great grounded advice, things to think about. Please feel free to give me a shout if you want to discuss further on things that I've been hearing. If you want to know what's going to happen next year though, sorry, I can't tell you and neither can anybody. Take care, folks. Hope you're having a great fall season, and I hope to catch up with many of you soon. Bye for now.